Good evening. I'm Whiskey Mike,
And I'm Keeper.
and this is MPN. Tonight, we will navigate a world where the lines between heritage and commerce and between diplomacy and survival are being discovered. Our top story tonight: a global entertainment giant is forced to confront the ghosts of history. We'll take you inside the Pokemon Company's formal apology as they navigate a firestorm of condemnation from East Asia. Then we turn to the heart of the Democratic Republic of Congo, where a catastrophic mining disaster exposes the lethal human cost behind the technology in your pocket. Across the globe, the map is shifting from the seismic restructuring of power in northern Syria to the deadly drone offensives preceding high stakes peace talks in Ukraine. The geopolitical landscape is in a state of flux. We'll also look at the high stakes humanitarian standoffs in Gaza, the unintended consequences of Mexico's war on vaping, and the return of American diplomacy to Venezuela. Finally, we head to New Delhi, where India is cementing its role as a global anchor through a historic summit with the Arab League. This is your global briefing. This is MPN.
The controversy erupted after a planned fan event was scheduled to take place at Tokyo's Yasukuni Shrine, a site that honors 2.5 million Japanese war dead, including 14 Class A war criminals. To many across East Asia, the shrine serves as a polarizing symbol of Japan's imperial past and is frequently viewed as a lack of remorse for the atrocities committed during World War II. The backlash was particularly sharp in Beijing. The state affiliated media outlet, the People's Daily, underscored the potential economic and reputational consequences for the gaming giant, asserting brands that disregard history and hurt the feelings of the Chinese people will ultimately be abandoned by the market. The relevant enterprises must accordingly take social responsibility and not make light of the heavy weight of history in the name of entertainment. In a bid to mitigate the diplomatic fallout, the Pokémon Company released a statement clarifying that the event was organized by a local affiliate and not directly by the parent corporation. However, critics were quick to point out that the gathering had been prominently featured on the company's official digital calendar before being abruptly scrubbed. In a candid admission of oversight, the company later conceded. Their statement was, "It was an event that should not have been held to begin with."
The tragedy occurred at the Robaya mines in North Kivu, as site currently controlled by M23 rebel forces following a period of torrential rainfall. Lumumba Kambe Ra Boyesa, a spokesperson for the regional administration, confirmed the grim toll, noting that the victims represent a cross section of the mining community. More than 200 people were victims of this landslide, including minors, children, and market women, he stated. Some people were rescued in time and have serious injuries. The Rumbea site is a cornerstone of the global tech economy, supplying an estimated 15% of the world's tantalum. This conflict mineral is prized for its extraordinary properties. Its biocompatibility makes it a staple for medical implants and surgical instruments, as it triggers no immune response in human tissue. In the tech sector, its high capacitance and stability are essential for the miniaturization of smartphones and laptops. Beyond consumer goods, tantalum's high melting point and corrosive resistance make it indispensable in the aeronautics industry for the fabrication of rocket nozzles and aircraft nose cones. However, the extraction of this critical mineral remains a primitive and perilous endeavor. Former miners describe a chaotic, unregulated environment where the tunnels are hand dug with little to no structural integrity. Clovis Maffair, a former miner, highlighted the systemic instability of the site. People dig everywhere without control or safety measures. In a single pit, there can be as many as 500 miners, and because the tunnels run parallel, one collapse can affect many pits at once. As the global demand for tantalum continues to surge, this disaster serves as a stark reminder of the ethical chasm between the sophisticated devices in the palm of our hands and the hazardous, often child labor driven conditions under which their raw materials are extracted.
The geopolitical landscape of northern Syria is undergoing a seismic restructuring as the Syrian Democratic Forces, SDF, a Kurdish led paramilitary group, face an aggressive southward push from the forces loyal to interim Syrian President Ahmad al Shara. This offensive is framed by the Damascus administration as a necessary campaign of national reunification, aimed at reclaiming territories that the SDF has administered since the territorial defeat of the Islamic State. In several former ISIS strongholds, the transition of power has been met with local jubilation, as residents view the displacement of Kurdish governance as a restoration of sovereign Syrian authority. For the SDF, the current retreat is shadowed by a profound sense of strategic abandonment. Having served as the primary boots on the ground partner for the Western coalition during the war against the Caliphate, Kurdish leadership now reports a deep-seated feeling of betrayal by Washington and its allies. As Western priorities shift, the SDF finds itself vulnerable to a re-energized central government determined to consolidate power. Perhaps the most volatile consequence of this shift is the deteriorating stability of detention centers such as the Al-Raj camp, which houses the families of former ISIS militants. As the SDF's grip on these facilities weakens, a wave of ideological fervor is reportedly sweeping through the enclosures. Inmates, many of whom have been rendered stateless by the refusal of their home countries to repatriate them, perceive the incoming government forces and the general regional chaos as a catalyst for their eventual liberation. Hekmiah Ibrahim, the administrator of the Al-Raj camp, provided a harrowing assessment of the internal atmosphere. He stated, since the new government took control of Damascus, there have been noticeable changes in the camp. The women are feeling empowered and hopeful, believing that the era of the Islamic State is returning because they perceive ideologically aligned forces to be back in power. This resurgence of extremist sentiment suggests that while the borders of the Syrian state may be reunifying, the underlying ideological fractures remain as dangerous as ever. The transition of these camps from Kurdish to government custody represents a pivotal moment that could either lead to a controlled dissolution of the crisis or a catastrophic revival of radical insurgency.
On the eve of pivotal trilateral negotiations, the kinetic conflict in Ukraine has intensified significantly. On the night of February 1st, Russian forces launched a sophisticated aerial assault involving approximately 90 unmanned aerial vehicles. According to reports from Ukraine Air Force, while the majority of the drones were intercepted, 14 successfully breached defenses, impacting 9 distinct locations across the country. The most devastating of these strikes occurred in the Dnipropetrovsk region, where a drone targeted a transport vehicle carrying personnel to the Dnipro mine. The attack resulted in deaths of 12 mine workers, an event the Ukrainian energy conglomerate DTEK characterized as a massive terrorist attack. Ukrainian Prime Minister Denis Samad echoed this condemnation, emphasizing the deliberate targeting of industrial infrastructure. Today, the enemy carried out a cynical and targeted attack on energy sector workers in the Dnipropetrovsk region. This surge in violence serves as a grim backdrop to the diplomatic efforts currently unfolding in the United Arab Emirates. President Vladimir Zelensky confirmed that negotiations involving Ukraine, Russia, and the United States are scheduled for February 4th and 5th in Abu Dhabi. Despite the ongoing strikes, the Ukrainian administration has signaled a commitment to the diplomatic process. President Zelensky remarked, "We have just had a report from our negotiating team. Ukraine is ready for substantive talks, and we are interested in an outcome that will bring us closer to a real and dignified end to the war. However, the path to a dignified end remains obstructed by fundamental territorial disagreements. The core impasse centers on the status of occupied regions. Ukraine maintains a firm stance on the restoration of its sovereign borders, while Moscow has yet to signal a willingness to withdraw from captured territories." As representatives convene in Abu Dhabi, the international community is watching to see if these talks can bridge a chasm that 3 years of total war have only widened.
The international community, led by a coalition of Islamic nations, has issued a sharp condemnation of Israel following a surge in regional airstrikes and the implementation of a highly restrictive. While the reopening of the Gaza-Egypt corridor was initially hailed as a milestone for the October 11th ceasefire, the practical reality has proven largely symbolic. Under the current mandate, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has restricted movement to a maximum of 50 departures and 50 arrivals per day, specifically prioritizing medical evacuations and those who fled during the height of the conflict. The protocol requires that any individual crossing may be accompanied by 2 relatives. However, the transition is far from seamless. All travelers are subject to rigorous vetting by Israeli and Egyptian security services and must remain under the continuous supervision of border agents. Foreign ministers from the nations including Saudi Arabia, Jordan, and Turkey have characterized these measures and the ongoing strikes as a direct threat to the political process, warning that the lack of genuine mobility risks undermine efforts aimed at consolidating calm. Simultaneously, a high-stakes legal battle is unfolding between the Israeli government and Doctors Without Borders. Israel's Ministry of Diaspora Affairs has moved to terminate MSF's operations in Gaza by February 28, citing the organization's refusal to comply with new registration mandates. The core of the dispute rests on a requirement for aid groups to submit comprehensive lists of all local Palestinian employees to Israeli authorities. MSF has steadfastly refused to provide these rosters, arguing that doing so would place their staff at grave risk and violate the humanitarian principle of neutrality. Conversely, Avi Cohen Scali, Director General of Diaspora Ministry, has framed the refusal as an evasion of accountability, suggesting that the lists are a necessary security measure to prevent the infiltration of aid groups by militant factions. Avi Cohen Scali issued a blunt critique of the organization's stance. The world must understand that MSF was given a clear opportunity, but the organization chose to violate a public commitment and evade the basic transparency required of any humanitarian organization. If the organization had nothing to hide, the employee lists would have been transferred to the inter-ministerial team. As the February 28th deadline approaches, the potential expulsion of one of Gaza's largest medical providers threatens to leave nearly 500,000 people without critical health care, further destabilizing an already fractured humanitarian landscape.
In a sweeping legislative maneuver this past January, Mexico joined a growing bloc of at least 8 Latin American nations by implementing a comprehensive ban on the sale of electronic cigarettes. This policy shift is framed by the administration as a dual front offensive, an effort to safeguard public health, and a strategic attempt to dismantle a burgeoning revenue stream for the nation's powerful cartels, who have begun forcibly seizing control of legitimate retail outlets. However, many policy analysts suggest the prohibition may inadvertently achieve the opposite, further entrenching the organized crime within the nicotine market by eliminating all legal competition. The road to prohibition was legally fraught after the Mexican Supreme Court initially ruled a previous sales ban unconstitutional. The executive branch pursued a rigorous constitutional amendment to bypass judicial hurdles. With that amendment's final ratification in January, the legal status of e cigarettes was radically elevated. The distribution of vapes is now legally equated with the trafficking of high scheduled narcotics like fentanyl. This classification has sparked significant public dissension, with critics labeling the government response as disproportionate and a judicial overreach that ignores the nuances of harm reduction. The enforcement of this constitutional mandate has resulted in aggressive federal raids and the systemic seizure of inventory from formerly licensed retailers. With the closing of all previous legal loopholes, shop owners face a grim ultimatum: destroy the remaining stock or risk federal prosecution for what is now a top tier felony. Consequently, the vacuum left by legitimate businesses is being rapidly filled by illicit actors who operate outside the reach of the law. Industry experts warn that the true peril lies in the total removal of regulatory oversight. Without safety standards, the production, refilling, and distribution of these devices now fall entirely under the jurisdiction of criminal organizations. This lack of quality control raises the risk of adulterated products or dangerous chemical additives entering the lungs of consumers. Mexican City Mayor Clara Brigada underscored this alarming convergence of the illicit drug trade and the nicotine market, stating, "Those selling cocaine, fentanyl, and marijuana are selling you vapes." This blunt assessment highlights a growing fear among citizens. By driving the market underground, the government has transitioned vapes from a regulated consumer product to a tool of organized crime, where safety protocols are non existent and the integrity of the device is at the mercy of the cartel.
Acting Venezuelan President Delcy Rodriguez formally announced a landmark amnesty bill this past Friday, proposing a legislative framework for the release of individuals detained for political reasons under the previous administration. The initiative is framed as a foundational step toward restoring civil liberties. However, it has been met with a measure of domestic skepticism. A primary concern among the Venezuelan populace remains the potential for judicial dilution, the fear that the bill may inadvertently facilitate the release of violent offenders alongside those who unjustly imprisoned for political dissent. This internal pivot occurs against a backdrop of significant geopolitical shifts as the United States begins the complex process of reestablishing its diplomatic presence in Caracas. On January 31st, U.S. Charge d'Affaires Laura Dogu arrived in the capital, marking the first formal American diplomatic presence in the country since February 2019. Upon her arrival, Dogu signaled a proactive stance for the mission, stating, "My team and I are ready to work." While the State Department frames this return as a vital opportunity to provide humanitarian assistance and mend fractured international relations, seasoned observers suggest a more multifaceted objective. Within the Venezuelan corridors of power, there is a prevailing sentiment that the mission serves a strategic dual purpose: fostering a stable transition for the Venezuelan people while also maintaining a high-level vantage point to monitor the ongoing legal status of Nicolas Maduro, who currently resides in American custody. As the amnesty bill moves towards the legislative floor, the international community is watching to see if this opening signals a true democratic restoration or a calculated repositioning of the Venezuelan state.
India has formally convened a high level summit with the foreign ministers of the Arab League, marking the end of a nearly decade-long hiatus since the inaugural session in Manama, Bahrain in 2016. Addressing the assembly, Indian External Affairs Minister Subramaniam Jaishankar highlighted the urgency of this renewed cooperation, noting the profound shifts in regional stability over the preceding 12 months. Nowhere is this more apparent than in West Asia or the Middle East, where the landscape itself has undergone a dramatic change in the last year. This impacts all of us. Geopolitical analysts suggest that this outreach is a deliberate maneuver to position India as a stabilizing economic and political anchor during a period of global volatility. By deepening its ties with the Arab world, India aims to provide a counterweight to sharpening regional divisions. According to the Vice President of Foreign Policy at a prominent Indian think tank, this is an effort by India to project a sense of partnership with the Arab world when regional fault lines are sharpening. The foundation of this partnership remains rooted in a robust economic reality. Annual trade between India and the Arab League nations now exceeds 250 billion, a figure largely driven by India's critical reliance on energy imports. However, this summit signals an evolution beyond simple commodity exchange, moving towards a comprehensive strategic alignment that encompasses maritime security, infrastructure, and technological cooperation.
From the depths of the Rubaya mines to the diplomatic corridors of Abu Dhabi and New Delhi, tonight's reports highlight a global community grappling with the same fundamental questions. 1. How do we balance progress with ethics? 2. Can diplomacy truly hold in a world where fault lines are sharpening by the hour? Also, as companies like Pokémon learn the weight of historical sensitivity, and as nations like Mexico and Venezuela navigate the complexities of prohibition and reconciliation, one thing remains clear. The events of this week are not just isolated incidents, but interconnected pieces of a much larger global puzzle. We will continue to monitor the outcomes of the Abu Dhabi summit and the unfolding humanitarian situation in Gaza as those deadlines approach. For everyone here at the NPN Newsroom, thank you for trusting us with your time. Stay informed, stay vigilant. We'll see you back here next time. Good night. As the SDF.
Ever.
It does nothing. Just
Sorry,
I
sorry.
can do
I couldn't
words.
resist.
It's a defer.
You were doing fine.
I know. I tongue-tied myself. Go to the
Well-
sentence before that.
Untie your tongue.
I'm working
You
on
need to
it.
keep that shit loose. Up a smidge there, bud. Hey,
Go. Hey, producer.
Hey, Aardvark.
Yes.
I need you to move it up a little bit, okay?
Like there?
Yeah.
Perfect.
Thank God we're not paying you.
You're
I
getting
mean, that's
paid?
fair.
Oh, okay.
As rep.
There's gonna be a strangling.
It's your brother. The Rafa pilot.
Rafa.
The Rafa pilot.
Symbolic
Rafa is such a
reopening
good
amid regional
word.
condemnation.
Rafa is a very satisfying word to say. I don't know why. It just is. Rafa. Rafa. Rafa.
The word issue is there.
There's no word issued there anywhere. No,
As issued.
that's not there. That doesn't exist.
Got it. Huh?
Gonna double down, triple down.
Used wrong, but that's fine. And those who's fled the height of the conflict. Nope, I don't like it. Go back up. Ugh.
To where?
Fled during the height of the conflict.
Yep.
Yeah.
Under the current mandate?
Yes.
Consequently, the Bactum left Bactum. Mayo City Mayo.
Mayor.
On January 31st, 33rd.
33rd.
Pause. Marketing.
Marketing?
No, pause.
Marketing.
Pause.
Keep going. No, but really pause.
Another.
All right, 3. Here we go.
Ready for me to press play?
Yep.
Yes.
Ben?
Finn.
Fin.
Fin.
But where's my fin? I see no fin. Where's my fin? Where? There.